Good evenings, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Walk the Block, where we are navigating digital finance together. And this is the big week. This is the week we've been alluding to pretty much for the majority of 2025. We have a lot of legislation going through Congress right now, specifically talking about the Genius Act for stablecoins, Clarity Act for regulation, and then the anti-CBDC bill. And there's even some hearings talking about tax proposals, but unfortunately, no legislation on tax proposals just yet. Regardless, though, more exciting news, though, that we have been waiting for all year and possibly 3 years at this point is that Bitcoin, new all-time highs. We topped out at about 123,000 last night, currently sitting just a hair under 120K. So these are very, very exciting times. So we're looking forward to talking about who's buying, how much, and what exactly they're buying. Because fun fact, it's not just Bitcoin. There's a lot more going on besides that right now. Outside of that, folks, hello, I'm Zenith, your host for this evening, and I'm joined by my excellent compatriot, Tracker. How we doing, buddy?
Doing well, man. Yes, there is a lot to things. It's definitely not a boring time to be in crypto, that is for sure. Lots of things to talk about today.
For sure. So we will be talking Bitcoin price and some Ethereum price, maybe a few others as well. I guess we do have to tip our hats to XRP gang when they do well. But if you want more of that detailed technical analysis, go ahead, join our private Telegram group. In there, you can get access to all the different streams that our very own Agent J, our great value technical analyst, does, breaking down all of this and more in very, very high detail. But outside of that, anything we need to mention before we get to it?
No, I think we just dive right into the big things, which is like the thing that everyone's going to be talking about is obviously the price action of Bitcoin, specifically Bitcoin, just because this is a very historic point that the movement we just have had. We're talking Ethereum. Bitcoin is now in the 120 handle. Not many people, a lot of naysayers out there that said we would never cross over 100,000. Hit over 100,000 back in, we crossed that threshold back in December. Did it again in January. Had a nice pullback retracement to shake out the weak hands. Came back and it backfilled. And if you look at the Bitcoin chart, had a nice backfill to that gap down. And then now we're heading the next leg up. Consolidation back around the 100,000. We'll say 100. We'll say right around that 110 to roughly that $100,000 area that we consolidated for quite a few months down. Good consolidation. Now we're breaking out to the next leg up. Good, healthy looking chart. To me, you've got a lot of support now, right around that 107. Certainly right around the 100,000 psychological level, but tons of support there. That used to be resistance. Now it's going to become support. Now the question is Bitcoin going to stall out now, or are we going to actually, or is it going to continue and keep going up, or are we going to actually come back and backfill to, we'll say, the breakout range of that 110 area, 108 area? It'd be interesting to see if we do pull back. If we do, that would be a good area to, at least in my sake, if you've got any dry capital, that's probably a good chance to load back up if you're looking to go into Bitcoin. Personally, I'm more focused on Ethereum because I think Ethereum's held up a little bit better on this pullback. Thoughts on that, Dees? Sorry, Zena, apologize.
All good, big guy. I largely agree with you pretty much. Talking about the resistance and this move to the upside. If we go look at our chart, back early May, we actually went back up to the 100K level. We sat there for about a week, retested some of those levels, didn't cross back down before below 100K, went up, new all-time high, first one, came back down for a retest. My orange line here, that is my 50-day moving average. The yellow is my 20, and my red is my 200-day moving average. Just for a quick reminder, those are my indicators of short, medium, and long-term momentum in the market. So seeing it come down, touch the 50, and then go back up. Didn't quite make a new all-time high, but then we came back down even further, made another retest. This one, only 98K before we went up to our most recent run, which has happened pretty much over the last month. And late in the evening last night, let's see if we can go down on the hour. Yep, there we go. $123,205 Bitcoin. Since then, we've retraced bit down to the 119,000 level, but have not dipped back down below it. For a quick reference, we are on day 23 of the new Bitcoin 60-day cycle. For a reminder, this is also a phenomenon that happens in the Bitcoin markets, which is it kind of operates on 60-day cycles where it makes new lows before moving back towards the upside to make a cycle high or a new cycle low. Depending on how the market is moving, you could either have an up cycle, a down cycle, or you can just chop sideways. What we saw over the last 76 days was most definitely an up cycle when we went all the way from about 75K to $112,000 Bitcoin. So what we're seeing here is all the moving averages are pointing in that upwards direction. They're starting to spread out a little bit, showing that the move is very aggressive currently. And we are in uncharted territory, meaning there's technically no resistance levels above this. There are some Fibonacci's levels and some psychological resistance levels. I think that $125,000 Bitcoin is a good psychological resistance level just because it's that nice whole round number. But after that, we're going to be, I mean, we made it into 120s after this point. Next question is, when's 130? When are we going to start breaking into those higher levels? Because remember, if we're operating off the 4-year cycle theory, that means we only got about 3 months left for that full 4-year cycle to play out from top to top. There has been a lot of chatter this year and even last year as well, talking about an extended cycle, potentially about going into 2026, early 2026, before we do the usual and have that market correction towards the downside. As it stands right now, though, this is all very bullish news. I think a lot of the macro news items are lining up in alignment with this as well. And we're also seeing an increased amount of volume. Granted, the amount of volume, my green candles down here, they're not as massive as some of the ones that we've previously had. But nonetheless, in recent memory, these are a good chunk of volume coming in. If we go down to our RSI, this is our relative strength index. What this is a index number based on the relative strength of the market based on previous moves. We are technically in the overbought area, which is above 70. The index goes 1 to 100. So if we can maintain this area for a little bit, we can see some aggressive moves to the upside. Because once you have a good amount of time in this overbought area, that's where you can see some very aggressive moves to the upside, like we've seen through the rest of the cycle so far. As it stands right now, though, we're sitting at about 74.9, 75-ish, and the momentum only looks like it's going up from here. So the question is, are we going to get a pullback? Does it continue? That's really the thing that we're shaking the magic 8 ball to figure out. If it was me, I would say that if we continue to see the same volume, it's going to keep going up. I don't think that people are really interested in taking profits right now. I think that we're getting to the point in the cycle where it's going to get stupid hot. And we're going to start to see that mania, that fever, that everybody and their mother talking about it. And all of us here on the other crypto side of the house are going to be fielding a lot more questions from the in-laws about what is this Bitcoin thing? Should I buy it? Should I turn my entire retirement savings into it? By the way, the answer to that last one is no. But then again, nothing we say here is financial advice. You got to be in control of your own stuff. Becker, do you think we can sustain this?
Yeah, here's, if you want a healthy market, you want it to backfill. It could still go up. Don't get me wrong. We could go up more, then it could proceed to backfill, or it could just go parabolic. The healthier, if you zoom out on the whole Bitcoin for the last, I don't know, so many, couple of years here, you've got this really pretty stepping stones. We bottomed out Q4, we'll say Q4 of 2022. That's when, as far as telling all your family members to load up and back up the truck, it was Q4 of 2022 is when you wanted to do it, by the way. I was trying to tell family members and people, but nobody wanted to listen to me. So that's fine. But that's everything. That was where you wanted to do it.
As a little note, the final nail in the coffin, this big red candle right here, that was the final dying breaths of the FTX collapse. That was the marker that made our market low there.
Mm-hmm. Q4 22, that was the time to back up the truck and throw anything you possibly could throw at anything, because you had much more risk to the upside than you did the downside at that point. It was so exacerbated to the downside with all the FUD, all the news. It was about as bad as you could beat up the crypto market. SEC was against you, FTX scandals. Every time you turn on, there was some major rug, central exchange going down. It was running through landmines is basically what it was.
That's true. But yeah, this cycle has not...
of it.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was just saying, well, go ahead and finish your thoughts, Zenith, this cycle.
I was going to say this cycle has been a little bit different than what we expected probably when we were talking like 2-3 years ago, which is that we were expecting Bitcoin to run first, then a handful of alt seasons along the way. But realistically, it's just been Bitcoin season the entire way through.
And that's what I was about to talk about. So if you look at Bitcoin, look how healthy this chart is. So you had volume coming in. We're just kind of creeping up, finding new bases, stepping up to the next level. Then we're consolidating. Then we're going up to the next level. Then we had a huge consolidation for most of 2024, sideways consolidation. Then we broke out. Then we had a huge consolidation to the sideways with a constructive, backfill that came back to that, we'll say mid 70. $1,000 handle area, pulled back there, good consolidation. Now it ramped back up, good more consolidation at the all-time highs, and then a continuing breakout that we've had. That's a healthy looking chart. It's a very healthy looking chart. Like all the backfills have been done. It hasn't gone too far. Anytime you see something go parabolic, and it's not saying we're just looking at the structures on a chart. It's a nice way to look at something that can consolidate a lot of thinking behind that. And that is, if you have something go straight up and it's just ripping all these X's out, that's where profit takers are going to start dumping left and right, because they want to capitalize on those, potential life-changing, opportunities. So it's non-sustainable. That's why you need these corrective pullbacks and a nice healthy structure. Like Bitcoin's chart is beautiful. The frustrating part about all this, and I would say probably the people who are more closer to the crypto, the frustrating part is, if you would have stayed in Bitcoin this whole time, you would have been looking pretty the whole time. That's the frustrating part. And I know a lot of people who don't really follow crypto much, but they had a lot in Bitcoin and they're reaping the rewards from that. So the people who have really stayed close to all this and have been diversified out between Bitcoin, Ethereum, and some other stuff. Keep in mind, in 2024, when we had that March move in March, people thought that was the flipping part that was going to happen in March of 2024, like alts, the AI coins, those all started going really big moves, and we kind of, okay, here we go. And then nope, it wasn't that. And the reasoning behind it was the SEC was strangholding the crypto market again, suppressing it from happening, which they did. And we had this whole year of just being lost, kind of in this, rocking us to sleep almost, to shake out weak hands and frustrating people. This has been the most frustrating cycle, probably going back since the 4-year cycles have been introduced with the whole Bitcoin history. And I think the reason behind it is the institutions want to frustrate people, whether it's the regulations, whether it's this. Now, with that being said, all of this is coming to fruition now. Now, all the things we've talked about, SEC, they're out of the way now. Very pro crypto environment. You can't get any more pro crypto than what the US has been recently. It seems like anything they're doing, it's just a win after a win for the crypto industry. So, which will lead into our next discussion on the whole crypto week. But you're seeing this, it's been a very frustrating long term. So I think, the fact that we could have it, I think more people are leaning towards that extended cycle, is not because it's just an oddity and this rare instance. I think it's just going to happen because of all the regulation, all the bumps that have happened along the way. And unfortunately, it's just what's transpired. It's going to be frustrating if we don't have a true rotation. I'm looking for all the news coming out recently that should be more pro Ethereum, which we'll get into that price chart. But to answer your question initially, is it sustainable? Bitcoin has definitely shown us it is definitely sustainable. One thing that I've noticed is you really don't ever really just get a blow off top, and then it just goes straight down. Even if, let's say, I don't think this is the top by any means, but let's just say this was the top, you would still get a pullback, and then you would have a retest of that all-time high, and then that would fail, and then that would and then you would have this kind of rolling over process where you would break through and you would make a new low past 74,000. I don't see that happening, but it takes time to roll over and change a market. Just like you saw the rotation from a bear market to a bull market. Look how long it took. It took almost a year, half of 2022 and half of 2023 to really get that nice little bottoming out process. So sometimes these take a long time to manifest. And I think now with more institutions and that have come to the game, you're seeing a more mature market. And because of that, I think it'll take longer to have blow off tops and more rotating over when that top does come, which we will be very closely watching everything, certainly with the on-chain data and all the other TAs we watch.
That's true. I personally think that in the very short term, I do expect this to continue towards the upside. Maybe not immediately, but what I'm referencing here is for this current 60-day cycle, I think the momentum is very much so towards the upside, and I think it's in alignment with the 4-year cycle theory, which is this is the point in the market where we are going to start to see things go slightly parabolic, and Bitcoin is part of that. Granted, it's not going to 2x from here, I don't think, in the course of a month or two. But as far as the next of the 37 days in this alleged 60-day cycle, I think that, yeah, odds are we're going to see a very bullish cycle, meaning that our cycle high is going to be somewhere past day 30. Because right now, our cycle high is on day 22. So I'm not saying it's immediate, but honestly, some reasonable market structure would be like chop around for a day or two up here, maybe have a wick down and retest your 20-day moving average, and then continue that move to the upside. And we could see that cycle high probably somewhere around day like 40 or 40, 45, somewhere like that, and then come back down for another retest before we go into what could possibly be the last 60-day cycle of the bull market.
Hey, Zenith, quick question. Where's the 20-day cycle right now? Where's that moving average 20-day? What price is that on right now? Is that what is that?
111.
111? Okay. Yep. That actually would align up actually to the breakout areas.
Yeah, right now our previous all-time high was at about 112,000. So if we could see a retest of that all-time high, see it flip from a resistance to a support, that would be a very bullish indicator.
Exactly.
Tell you what, let's talk about the other one that we're watching right now, and that is Ethereum. So you were the one that pointed out that this 26 and change line had never really been broken through or had many daily closes above it. We had one daily close above it before we went back down below, but now we have multiple consecutive daily closes above what previously was a very, very tough resistance area to get through.
Yeah, it was like even before the other little wick that we had up before then, because you think about it. So when we went up in that little wick there, and we broke through the first time, that's when Trump came out and announced the dispute between Trump and Musk. That's what had the markets, shaken out right there. At least that was the macro. Now, whether or not that was an excuse, who knows? But that was the shakeout that kind of came down right there. And that was frustrating to see that breakout and then it kind of get rejected. But when it did come back, interesting enough, it did come back to those DCA areas that we had identified, that Jay had laid out and we'd all talked. 2300 to the 2360 to 2300 area was the first DCA area. Then the last one was right around that 2180 down to 2110 area. I sniped some. Then I get the very, very bottom, but I did snipe my bag. I rotated out Bitcoin right there into that wick down into Ethereum. And I did it a couple times during this consolidation because I felt like this was the time Ethereum was starting to get a little more momentum going. Ethereum's holding better up in the pullback now because you think about it, Ethereum's high was just 378, and it's just bouncing around. It's kind of holding that 3,000 psychological level. I've just been kind of watching it. It seems to be holding very well. But if it were to backfill, you probably would come back to that 2,800. We'll call it 2,800 area. You'll probably see it come down around there as a support level, give or take, I don't know, 20. But if it does, that's why I was thinking, well, maybe we'll take some here and we'll probably backfill. But then it was like, well, we got the crypto week coming up. So do I really want to be playing around and trying to get too cute with this? No, I don't. I don't want to basically take profits on a little bit of savings to get a little bit of a discount, or you miss a major move up potentially. And then of course, so that was my theory on that piece. And then of course, we're watching the Ethereum BTC price, which Ethereum still has been going sideways. It just cannot seem to get out ahead of Bitcoin. So I think that's what everybody else is really watching. When you see this breakout, the Ethereum to Bitcoin ratio, you can bring that chart up next after we look at this. But once that breaks out, then I think that's what's going to have a lot of people watching. Is this the beginning of the alt season? That's what I think what everyone's going to be more or less focused on, because it's been trying. It's tried twice. It failed. We're kind of getting close back to that level, that 0.02 level on the Bitcoin to ETH ratio or ETH to BTC ratio. It just doesn't seem to want to break through. So it's been a little frustrating. Yeah, right there. Down here, we got it on the weekly. Yeah, see that area? It's just like been this down here at the bottom, right here at that 0.025 area. It just has been a stubborn little area here for it to switch over. So we're looking for that to kind of break through to see Ethereum break. That's what everyone's hoping to see. Because if that does, it'll trickle down to the other alts, of course, and that'll be good news for everybody. And hopefully the news coming out this week is just the beginning of that, clarity that we're going to be talking about too. So I don't know, what's your thoughts on it? I mean, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the Ethereum price.
The Ethereum story is largely that we had this cycle high back at about we just barely kissed $4,100 for Ethereum. I want to say the all-time high is like 42 and change. So since then, this is back in March of 2024. This is the massive pump that we saw after the Bitcoin ETF got approved. And then we see some fluctuations, but then we start dropping off. And we spent a good chunk of 2024 there down at that 2,300 to 2,600 level. We did see another run up to, again, about $4,100 before we saw this massive just drop off, which this is, in my opinion, the most unprecedented and unforeseen thing that we saw for the entire 4-year cycle, which is that Ethereum is supposed to be our number 2 blue chip. But this kind of action, meanwhile, Bitcoin is not taking these kinds of losses, because this right here is, I want to say it's like at least a 50% correction, if not more. Yeah, that's a 66% correction in a time that should honestly be regarded as the beginning of the bull market.
Yeah, I ran the numbers of ETH. For ETH to get to where Bitcoin is now, it would have to be at $6,600. That's what ETH would have to be at to be equivalent to what Bitcoin's done.
Yeah. So Ethereum has had its own handful of issues that are separate from the fundamentals of Bitcoin, which is largely Ethereum it can be inflationary or deflationary based on whatever's going on in the network. We've talked about it previously on other shows, which is that the layer 2s built on Ethereum have not been contributing to burning Ethereum gas, which if you're a user, it's a good thing because it keeps gas prices low and it keeps the throughput fee that you have to pay for it in the terms of raw number of ETH. It keeps that also low. That being said, though, what that does is it increases the supply instead of decreasing the supply. What you want to see from an asset that you're trying to store value in is you want to see that scarcity. So we weren't seeing increased scarcity during this time. We're actually seeing decreased scarcity. We recently have seen a small flip to the other side. So now ETH is slightly deflationary, but it's nothing massive. If you look at the chart and zoom out, it doesn't really look like a downward slope. It looks pretty flat. But regardless, that's still a change, and it's a good change. So what we're seeing right now, what you talked about previously, that 2,800 area, yeah, that's an area of support and resistance from the past, whether it was in the past bull market when we had that double top going on, or even some of these, this is earlier in 2024, not the double top. We've seen that this is a critical area. We're back above it. If we can consolidate and stay above it and flip it from resistance to support, that'll be a massive thing. I think that, again, we talked about it earlier in the show, which is that this has been largely a Bitcoin dominant cycle. I think that there's only so much juice left to squeeze out of Bitcoin. And I think that we're starting to see indicators that people are looking to other assets as they view crypto as highly lucrative because Bitcoin proved that it was. Now they want to see where else they can get the gains from. Ethereum, it's the number 2. It's the next option. Granted, there is the ETF for it, but the ETF has not performed nearly the same as the Bitcoin ETF has. So I could see a rotation of capital from traditional finance into something like that in an attempt to get some more profit out of that. But at the same time, though, I think that the reason Ethereum does well traditionally is that it's the use case. Bitcoin, we've wholeheartedly seen the transition from Bitcoin was peerless digital trustless cash to Bitcoin is a store of value. I think we've made that full shift. So now, if you want to look at things that are actually going for that use case, Ethereum is the number 1 answer for it. Ethereum is the chain that decentralized finance lives on, and the vast majority of like good, well-backed, well-funded projects are on. So we're going to actually see the network be used to use the network instead of just store money on it, then that could be one of those things that really gets this going again. But as far as volume on it goes, it's average, it's middling at best currently. We've seen a lot more volume coming in and out before, but at the same time, though, Ethereum has been lagging this cycle. And every time I talk about like this area right here, I got real happy because I was like, oh, look, we finally corrected and we looked like we're going to the upside. Nope, not done yet. And then we dumped even more. So
I will say this, you brought up a good point, and that is, so actually bring up ultrasound money. Bring up that site because you'll see the inflationary deflationary aspect of it. I like that because they've actually updated it recently with the ETH supply is on there since all the major historical points on the ETH, how much in deflation, inflationary supply is coming on. The other thing is with Ethereum, I agree with what you're saying, and I think Bitcoin has always been the leader. But if you're looking for a lagger, Ethereum's number 2 market cap, and it's the big boy. Now keep in mind the L2s are living off of Ethereum as well. Ethereum could they could start taxing the L2s, which they should be doing. I don't know why the Ethereum Foundation's not taxing the L2, for piggybacking off them. Ethereum Foundation can do a lot of things to start beefing up, their price. I don't understand why they're just not doing it. That's the frustrating part from it. But Ethereum and a lot of big institutions are starting to buy Ethereum. I know we were going to talk about this, but there's some big holders we'll talk about that have been buying it, and it's starting to get on talking heads on the mainstream financial institutions talking shows that are really talking about it now, that are talking about buying it. The one in particular I'm talking about is Bitmine Immersions Technologies. Talking head on CNBC, Tommy Lee. He just became a chair founder on that company about a couple weeks ago, and he's a huge talking head on CNBC. So he's been marketing and telling everybody that he absolutely believes Ethereum is where you need placing your bets right now, because he feels like there's much more value to be made in Ethereum because it's lagged and because of all the regularity that's going to come out with all these new changes that are going to basically grease the wheels for them to be able to flourish in this new technology that TradFi will start to profit on, which is whether it's staking and all other aspects that you can actually profit on. They've even come out and stated that they want to be the MicroStrategies with Ethereum. That's their goal. And right now they own 163,000 Ethereum. So, and they just raised another 250 million to buy more. So they're definitely aggressively going after it. And I think not just them, but other companies are starting to build Ethereum treasuries on their companies to start holding those values. So it's interesting. It's starting to really get there. I mean, it's moving. So
yeah.
But
tell you what,
bring up the ultras. Oh yeah, let's do that.
Let's take a look at the clip talking about Tommy Lee, the new ETH pumper, if you will.
Joining us right now is Fundstrat's Tom Lee. He's also a CNBC contributor. And this morning, he's got some news. Bitcoin miner Bitmine Immersion Technologies announcing that Tom will become its chairman. Tom, welcome, first of all. And this is some big news. It's kind of complicated, but probably suffice to say that you all are doing basically what MicroStrategy did with Ether. You're going to make Ether, the purchases that you buy through this, you're going to set this whole thing up like this. You want to explain a little bit?
Yeah, glad to. You know, I'm still a big fan of Bitcoin because I think it is, you know, digital gold. But what we've seen in the last, really in 2025, is the financial services industry and crypto are converging. And it really started with stablecoins, which is the ChatGPT of crypto, right? Because it's viral adoption by consumers, businesses, banks, and now even Visa. Underneath the stablecoin industry is Ethereum. That is really like the backbone and architecture of stablecoins. So it's important to create a project that essentially accumulates Ethereum to
Apologies, slight technical difficulty. One sec.
to essentially protect and have some influence on the network. So that's why we're creating this treasury vehicle to buy Ethereum. The more Ethereum that's accumulated,
All right, I don't think it's going to let me finish the clip. Here. Anyways, yes, Tommy Lee, the new guy, really out there pumping Bitcoin. He's the one that is really.
So we keep getting rugged, obviously. Sorry for that, guys.
Yeah.
But just to give you some background on Tom Lee, he's a huge hedge fund person on Wall Street. He actually manages $1.5 billion. Like, this guy's a very smart talking head on CNBC. He's been on for a long time. He's made a lot of good calls. He's definitely somebody who, when he's talking, a lot of people are paying attention. He is. I wanted to put him up and say he's the best out there, but he's up there like when Art Capital's Kathy Wood speaks. It's kind of like that. When she speaks, he speaks. Other players out there on. He used to be a lot of hosts. You'd see him on like Fast Money and all these other shows. He'd come out there and speak on it. So he's definitely a very good strategic player. So if he's making moves, he wants to be the chairman, and he's putting a huge bet on it. That says a lot. Is how I'm going to put it. Sorry, we keep getting rugged, Zenith. Do you want to try to play it again, or do you want to give up on it?
I think we got the gist of it. The whole point here is that Michael Saylor obviously was the crazy man when he made the bet on Bitcoin back in the day, but now people are trying to replicate him. That's what we're seeing here. We're talking about the Ethereum reserves that they're trying to build up, though. As a bit of verification of what he's saying, if we want to go ahead and go over and look at what traditional finance is doing, this is our ETF overview. So this is coming to us from CoinGlass. If we go down, you might notice there's something new on the Ethereum inflow side of the house. Namely, we had the single largest day of Ethereum inflows that we've seen in the entire ETF's history. That was on Friday, July 10th. We saw 138,000 Ethereum be purchased at roughly about, what was that, $27,000? And then since then, the other days of inflows have also been very substantial as well. So this is a very different picture that we're getting now compared to earlier on in the year. Granted, we did have some good inflows during the summer when this is actually, sorry, the winter, when we saw that pump up to $4,000 again. And then we saw the Ethereum price pretty much just collapse all the way down to like 1500s ish. That's where we see this area right here. But now things are back in full swing. They're buying up again. And this is the most action that the Ethereum ETFs have seen in the entire history. But to compare it to what's going on with Bitcoin, Bitcoin has just been kind of hot the entire time. So also Bitcoin seeing a lot of inflows, not the largest day per se, but a lot of inflows as well. So right now the direction is going into crypto. It's not going anywhere else.
And just to add to that, gold obviously has done very well, and some other precious metals have done well just because of hard assets. But you're seeing, like I said, I can completely start seeing rotation into some of those, gold and Bitcoin rotating into some of the laggers just because there's more room to the upside for more profitability. And then also financial advisors are starting to now that you got all this clear regulation, they're starting to advise to their clients, starting to buy more of their portfolio in crypto as well. Not just, it used to be 3%, 5%. Now there's a lot of them are starting to move up into the 10 to 15% range, where they're putting that into who wants more, risk on appetite for investors for their diversified portfolios. That seems to be a trend that's been happening this whole, this year specifically. That's going to pick up more steam too. Certainly when you start seeing, in the mainstream media where Bitcoin's hitting all-time high. So Bitcoin's stealing the show because it's just outperformed everybody, and because everybody just knows what it is. I think with more of these institutions coming in and buying other coins that aren't necessarily Bitcoin, they're going to start advising to their clients these other opportunities to get into it, because these would be considered like emerging technology. Ethereum is going to fall under not just crypto, but emerging technologies, because it's going to be that class that they're going to say. That's why, people like Kathy Wood from ARK Investments and all, they always look for disrupting technologies. Well, Ethereum with the smart contracts and once you move into tokenization, now you're talking about the most disruptive industry in the history of mankind, probably. Because that's going to disrupt every single anything that you do in this world that can be linked to technology, that's going to disrupt. And we've already gave you guys some insights of what's happening. There's starting to be underlining rumbles in the retail and the real estate sector. They're starting to leverage it quite a bit in certain gaps and areas. You're starting to see tokenization. We've been seeing bits and pieces of tokenization, but I think you're going to start seeing this taking off. Certainly if they get the pass with this regulation, I guess ultimately what I'm saying is there's a lot more narratives to be in Ethereum, in my personal opinion, than would be in Bitcoin. Bitcoin has run, it's done beautifully. I think you're still going to get that rotation, and that's typical. If you think about it, everybody says, hey, we have alt season. Once Bitcoin kind of stalls out, then Ethereum kind of takes over, then it trickles down into others. And if you think about it, that's all that people are doing. They're just rotating out of the winners into the laggers. It's really nothing more than that. And I think they're going to get it. Yeah.
To take it from a little a higher level view, what we're doing here is we're not trying to poo-poo Bitcoin. Bitcoin is run fantastically. Investing in Bitcoin has been probably a very, very, very good play. But what we're doing now is we're trying to channel that inner Warren Buffett. We're looking for what is undervalued. Bitcoin, I think, is probably appropriately valued for where it's at right now in the cycle. Ethereum, the reason we're talking about it is that we think that Ethereum, like Tracker said, if Ethereum had performed the same as Bitcoin, Ethereum would be literally double what it is right now. So because of that, there's opportunity for Ethereum. We're seeing people in the market start to make those moves. That's what we're alluding to here. Additionally, even got an article here from Cointelegraph. Sharplink Gaming buys $49 million of Ethereum, and this is on top of their already large balance. So the company, whose board is chaired by Ethereum co-founder Joseph Lubin, has been all in on ETH since late May. This transaction brings Sharplink Gaming's total treasury value to 198,000 Ethereum, nearly worth $600 million at the time of writing. So there's a lot of, the point is, the energy has been with Bitcoin. Is the energy continue? Yeah, I think it's going to continue. But at the same time, though, we're looking for those gaps. We're looking for the holes where there might be something that's overlooked. And as crazy as it sounds, by the numbers, that's Ethereum, in my opinion.
Well, the crazy part about it is Sharplink Gaming, that is now the second largest holder of Ethereum, behind the Ethereum Foundation. That's That's pretty impressive. So they're doing that, but they're at 270,000 ETH, right? So in BitMinerverse they want to be the MicroStrategies. MicroStrategies is number 2 behind Satoshi, right? So that means BitMine, if they want to be that MicroStrategy of Ethereum, they're going to have to surpass Sharplink Gaming. So it's really how many people want to rush and try to get as many of their hands on the stuff before it starts making bigger moves, and they know it's coming. This is why they're trying to raise all this capital and money to build up these treasuries, because you can see the writing on the wall. It's not that if these legislative and bills are going to get passed, they're going to get passed. Everybody's pro crypto right now. It's crazy how much 1 year makes. Everything was so anti-crypto, and now it's all so pro-crypto. And it's not just the administration taking over; it's the change of a lot of different players coming into the space. So basically, 2024 and 2023 were the years of suppressing crypto, and now the end of 2024, like the last month or so, and then this year has been really let's let it fly, let's let it open up. So yeah, like you said, there's more narratives that are in the Ethereum side, and it hasn't performed anywhere near like it should. The argument is, if you bring up that ultrasound chart again, Zenith, I know we kind of didn't really look at it and glanced over it, but that really is the underlining. That's kind of the bearish thing about it, is the inflationary aspect. And I think if you look at that chart in the top left-hand corner, you can see over the last 3 years how there is a buying and burning mechanism, and then you had the merge, and they had all this stuff. But you can see in the top right-hand corner, over 3 years, there's been 4.6 million ETH burned, but there's been 8.3 million issued. So it's inflationary. That's the downside. So can the price grow, or is that going to start affecting the price overall? I don't know. We're going to see. But if more institutions are going to get the green light to own Ethereum, that's an appreciating asset, a hedge against inflation, and they can hold this and also then lead on to the staking aspects that Ethereum provides. You can hold an asset and gain what, 5%, 6%? It's a lot better than CDs. It's a lot better than other thing. Institutions are going to absolutely be entertained and be interested in jumping into those products, and you're going to see more of that. And you're seeing, like we talk about it. Oh, we beat this thing to death. The FDIC has greased the tracks. The banks now can hold crypto. The legislators coming out now to be more friendly. Stable coins are buying treasuries. It's just like you're seeing everything just kind of, it's screaming that Ethereum is going to need to run. The only thing that could keep it hold back is the puts and the people who want to suppress the price. That's the only thing that I could see happening. But I'm still betting personally that Ethereum is going to have a breakout. And like we said, if Ethereum were to get to the gains where Bitcoin has made, Ethereum should be at near $6,600, if not close to $7,000 for Ethereum. That's where it should be, if it would catch up with the move that Bitcoin's had since the bottom of, Q4 of 2022.
True. That's true. All right. Before we shift off of the markets topic, I mentioned at the beginning, got to tip the hat where it's due. One of the surprising ones that's been running during this latest move to the upside has been XRP. XRP has actually outperformed a good chunk of the market. They've had a good substantial move from about like $2.25 all the way up to $3. So
there's a reason.
What is the reason?
So the reason is we were alluding to this, I think, last week, but there's an ETF called GDLC, and they're trying to make it a spot ETF, and that has a spot in it. It's Bitcoin, Ethereum, no big shock there, but it also has XRP, Solana, and Cardano in it. And the SEC approved it, but then they kind of backtracked after they approved it and said, whoa, hold on. Let's wait and do a pending final decision by the SEC's full commission. So they wanted to make sure that everybody agrees to this before they move forward. Because I think the big holdup obviously is the Ethereum that's in there. There's no spot ETF for those other three, XRP, Solana, Cardano. When it came out, it's actually XRP and Cardano had moved. Let's look at the Cardano price. Has that had a pretty big move? Or has it moved at least similar? Not as much.
Moved? No. Yeah, that's the other thing here is that, like, you mentioned Solana, so we'll take a look at that one as well real quick. Solana.
Nope. Yeah, Solana never caught a bid, though. But if you think about it, Solana already had a monster move earlier during the whole meme craze pump that happened going into December. Like it already had its run. It outperformed everything back then, if you recall. So to me, it's already had a big move. XRP never did. Cardano never did. But I saw when they came out on that news, and then they were hinting about it on a decision coming out a couple of days ago, I saw XRP and Cardano both had double-digit gains for that day, while everything else was just kind of flat. So there's definitely, that's probably one underlying story that's happening. I don't know if there's anything else that's happening in XRP that justifies that move, though.
Not that I'm aware of, but yeah. To give another quick shout out, Sui has actually done, it's looking pretty good. Again, it's nothing like the XRP or the Bitcoin move, but again, this is one of the highest moving assets over the last 2 weeks. So it's something to keep an eye on for sure.
And keep in mind, Sui, and just to keep in mind here that these aren't small market caps. We're talking, these are top 20 coins. So to see a move like that, Sui has been the winner, I think, at this stage, because it's number 15 on market cap. But yeah, it's had this week alone 34% gains. That's a lot for a top 20. XRP's had 30. So both of them have done very well. Cardano had 26%. So that's in the last 7 days. So that's not a bad move for Cardano. So they've all had about around 30% gains here since that time. Ironically, XRLM has had a huge move. I don't know how that's even possible, but had 84% gain.
Wild stuff. Alrighty, tell you what, we got other topics to hit before we close out tonight, but I do want to take a moment and say hello to everybody in the chat tonight. We got Nate the Great coming in. Says all he wants for Christmas is for his ETH to pump. Yeah, we are right there with you. And
yeah, man.
Not gonna lie, I think it's looking pretty good right now. I know I get burned every time I say that, but I swear this time's different. Up next, we got our good friend Moonpilled Rational Optics. Says Christmas in July. It's here, boys. Hey, it's a good start. If we can get a little bit more to finish out the month, that would be fantastic. But not gonna look a gift horse in the mouth. This is a great start. And lastly, we got Centurion 54X saying, "What's up, my friends? Good to see you, sir. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in tonight." Alrighty, we alluded to it for most of the show. We even talked about it in the beginning, but it is finally here. It is time for Crypto Week in the United States. Today, Congress opened up with crypto bill debate. Right now, as it stands, we have three things we're looking at. We're looking at the Genius Act, we're looking at the Clarity Act, and we're looking at the Anti-CBDC Surveillance Act. So, Genius Act has already been passed by the Senate, and it is going to the House allegedly tomorrow for a floor vote. The Clarity Act is gone through the Senate. I believe it's gone through the Senate, and it's now with the House for revisions. Might take a little more time. And the anti-CBDC bill is through committees, but it's not nearly as far on as the other two. The big one that we're looking for this week is the Genius Act, the stablecoin bill. So what that one does is it actually creates some regulations about you have to have like one-to-one cash-backed assets for stablecoins that you're minting, and then it also creates further guidance and regulation. One of the pros about this is that if it passes, which it could by the end of the week, actually, if it passes, what this does is it further legitimizes the use of stablecoins. It's something that we saw in the clip we got rugged in on earlier, where Tom Lee was saying that stablecoins are going to be one of those things that help drive mass adoption because it should give more confidence to people that are not already in the crypto space. If you're in the crypto space, you're already in. We don't need to convince you anymore. This is looking to get mass adoption to the other levels. Because of the Genius Act, and where it's at right now, other companies like Amazon and Walmart are actually looking at and actually starting the path on developing their own stable coins. So these things could drive mass adoption, especially if you get possibly the two largest retailers in the United States on board with that plan. So that's what's going on there. As far as the Clarity Act, this one is a regulations clarification and guidance. What this actually does is it's a bit of an allusion to, if you remember last week's show, we talked about Trump's big, beautiful bill that got passed, but didn't really have any crypto stuff in it, except the people that regulate crypto were affected by it. Notably, the SEC lost $200 million in funding, and the CFTC, or the Commodities and Futures Trading Commission, gained $30 million in funding. What the Clarity Act does is it actually specifies who gets what. So under that bill, as it stands right now, if a cryptocurrency is ruled as a security, the SEC will oversee it. If it is ruled as a commodity, which Bitcoin and Ethereum have been, then it will be managed by the CFTC. So we're getting more clarification on the rules for lawmakers, the rules for the regulators at this point. And then lastly, the anti-CBDC bill, that one is pretty much putting in stone that the Federal Reserve or any other form of the United States government will never be allowed to create a centralized bank digital currency. Those things are pretty much like instant poison for a money supply, because what it does is it doesn't use blockchain technology, by the way, but more importantly, it gives admin controls directly to the government. I know it might sound a little tinfoil hat theory, but it's really not. We've seen what governments do whenever they get control of things and how far they're willing to go before the public pushes back. So doing that with the money supply, it seems like a moment you can't really walk back from too easily without further collapse. But as it stands right now, that is what we got going on. Today, we had some floor debate for the Genius Act, and we're hopefully going to see a vote on it tomorrow. Tracker, what do you think? Genius Act is going to pass, or are you going to get the thing that nothing ever happens, and this is just going to keep getting dragged out forever?
No, I think we're going to get some clarity, because I think they've already been proposed and it's been going through the proper channels. Everyone's been already. It's not like the first time they've seen this or heard it. Everything is very pro crypto now. I'd be shocked if it were. I'd be more surprised if these don't go through personally, just because of all the big movers. I mean, yeah, the big institutions like BlackRock are already supporting Circle. They're right. They're positioned beautifully to basically benefit off of this big time, them being Coinbase, or Circle, I should say, with USDC.
Yes.
There's also a lot of big players that are like I forgot who's his name, but he's one of the committee boards or something like that is basically tied to the USDT company. He came over and he'll be going back there. So he's already. So what I'm saying is a lot of big people that are crypto industry have been brought into this administration in one way or another. So they're already embedded. I just don't see this not going through. The Clarity Act one is very interesting, because like you said, it's going to be, does the Security and Exchange take over, or does the agricultural area take over on these things? Because on tomorrow at 3:00, the Senate, the Agriculture Committee, they're going to hold their hearing on it to hear their part of the Clarity Act. So that's going down at 3 p.m. tomorrow. I think today was really like just hearing everybody out, hearing what the pros and cons like they like to do, hear everything laid out, and then they're going to start the voting. Probably, I don't think it's Tuesday. I'm thinking the potential House floor vote is going to be on Tuesday. It looks like time to be determined. They haven't decided that, and of course it may not happen Tuesday. It could get pushed back. I think they were thinking sometime around 2 to 6 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday is when they could probably look at that one. Then the House Ways and Means Committee hearing on crypto taxation, that happens at 9 a.m. on Wednesday. So that one's going to be very interesting to hear. Even more so for that one, because if you don't realize it, there's quite a few states that have already started putting out their no capital gains tax on crypto. I don't know if there's obviously different speculations of how long you have to hold it or whatnot, but there are certain ones that are trying to waive to try to lure more crypto favored citizens to come to their states. And this is one of those enticing opportunities to do so. So you have that going on. It's going to be interesting to see how does that work with a state versus the federal. Obviously, there's federal taxes and state taxes, so they would be separated. But that's going to be interesting to see how they formulate that. And I think the Federal Reserve is probably, or the federal government's probably more prone to seeing what these little, we'll call them beta testing for states are, how they're trying to navigate. I'm sure they've been looking at those to see for potential opportunities to learn from. And then, of course, on Thursday, there's going to be debating and additional votes that are needed for Thursday. And then Friday, potential bill signing and wrap up. So that's kind of how it all gets laid out. So it's a whole week of hearings and then potential voting, potential revoting, some arguing. I'd be curious to know what is in some of these bills that may not be necessary, that are hidden, pork belly. I'm just curious to know what else is in this stuff that they're trying to squeeze in that could be either pro or against crypto. The CBDC Anti-Surveillance State Act, that one's going to get passed. That's a no-brainer because it's got such a stigma to it. They're not going to pass that. You can make a strong case, though, that the stable coins are 10 times worse than CBDCs because they're all programmable. Especially if they're on the smart contracts, you can block this, you can put all types of stuff in there. So the fact that they don't want to label it CBDCs doesn't mean they can't label it something else is the real big problem. So it'll be interesting to see how they, in that act that they create for the anti-surveillance states, I'm going to be curious to see what they put in there, because if it just says CBDCs, well, then you can create anything you want. Or is it going to say any form of it? It's going to be curious to see how they word that. It's going to be the bigger question.
Yeah, the language on that is always important whenever you talk about anything legally related. But as far as what I'm seeing right now, the people that are against the Anti-Surveillance Act, they're actually kind of citing the Genius Act, stating that if we want to include stablecoins, then this could potentially limit the ability to actually track what's going on with that kind of stuff. But at the same time, though, I think that's a bit of a stretch personally. I think that stablecoins are largely pretty good to go as they are. And really, the only thing that's been missing from them is some sort of like, if you want to compare it to the banks, it's some sort of like guarantee from the FDIC or some sort of safety net. for this kind of thing that will also prevent the issuers from just printing it into oblivion with no backing of it. So having the one-to-one backing for the liquid assets, I think, is a very good thing. As far as federal protections, I haven't seen any federal protections be listed, but I wouldn't be surprised if that kind of stuff is probably next on the agenda list after this. But at the same time,
certainly.
Yeah.
Certainly it will be, because if you're going through all this headache to get all this stuff done, laid out, institutions and banks now can hold it, and institutions can now lever this to their clients. Well, why would you not allow that to be open? Because then that's gonna basically keep people from wanting to get into it. So if they do it, to me, it's anything that's pro bank is gonna get passed. That's the best way I look at everything. If it's pro bank, it's going to happen. If it's pro institution, it's going to happen. That's just inevitable. I feel. I don't care who's in charge of the country, or the United States or not. It's going to get passed because it's going to benefit them. And I'm sorry to say it, but if you're living on a rock somewhere, I'll give you news. Banks control everything. I'm just going to lay it out what it is. So they're going to make sure that happens. They didn't do all this work not to leverage it and try to get as many people to buy these products and leverage them. And the 401k and traditional IRAs and any type of retirement funds, they have to have that in place, or they cannot offer it to the public.
For sure. To give a little more context about the landscape of it right now, the other arguments against the Genius Act are specifically referencing Donald Trump and his involvement with the World Liberty Foundation. That's the correct one, right?
You talking about the one he's been using to buy up his Trump coin, or it's that.
Yeah. So the argument against is just like, the president's trying to enrich himself. It's like, that's an interesting take, but if that was the take, then I don't know why you guys don't look at people for insider trading on the stock market and trying to do something about that. I think it's just a political tool that is being wielded currently that doesn't have a whole lot of merit behind it. So as it stands right now, I'm in agreement with you. I think that these things are probably going through. As far as what's not on the table today, or this week rather, is a lot of the tax proposals that we saw originally talking about how no capital gains tax on American crypto and that kind of stuff. That's unfortunately not in any of what we have on the table this week. There is a hearing later on the week. I want to say it's Thursday. Senator Cynthia Loomis actually has a proposal for updating taxes regarding crypto. Notably, there is a weird double taxation thing, which is that if you receive like a crypto asset like Bitcoin and then you sell it later on, you get taxed on gaining the asset and then selling the asset. So that's the kind of stuff that they're focused on there. As far as the other options going on, what we have right now, like actually written down, are we have the executive orders back from January. We have the Genius, Clarity, and anti-CBDC surveillance stuff. Those are the only things that have actually made it to pen and paper and gone through the process. Everything else right now is kind of just like still up in committee based on what's going on with the crypto czar, and the SEC's waiting to release guidance on stuff. So there's still a lot of other things to come, but this is the first landmark thing that we've seen pretty much all year since we got the executive orders back in January, which I'm excited to see.
Yeah, so what you're talking about is on Wednesday. Yeah, that's the House Ways and Means Committee hearing on crypto taxation. The hearing will address tax policies for cryptocurrencies, potential covering capital gains, staking rewards, stable transactions. I mean, yeah, this is huge. It's a key environment for the investor. Okay, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it's going to definitely add a lot of clarity if they can get something cleaned up on that, because there's a lot of like question marks on that one. Are they going to treat staking rewards like dividend yields? You know, they're going to try to fit this to be in line with the traditional finance, but then it comes down to, at least with a dividend, a company is paying the investors, right? It comes from a company. Mm-hmm. So what do you do with a DeFi protocol that gives you stable rewards, but it's just a program? You know, like how does that work?
That is a really interesting question, because there's, with the traditional finance model with the dividend, there's a clear transfer of money, versus when it comes to DeFi and the issuance of tokens, it's kind of like getting created out of nothing.
Yeah, you're working with a program, and they're going to say, well, who owns the program? Well, I don't know who owns it. If it's like a traditional DeFi, it might just sit out there. And that's what I'm saying. They're going to have to rewrite laws and regulation. You can't just keep using old, outdated. Like the argument that the SEC had, why you couldn't classify these. You can classify them, or and if you can, you're going to have to update things. Sorry, you're going to have to update to the times. You can't keep using outdated policies. You're going to have to upgrade. So that's one thing
That's
they're going to
true.
be forced to do. And I think that's what the committees are, the cryptos are, and those committees are going to be faced to deal with right now. And they've been talking to a lot of people in the industry, so they're learning how these things work and operate. So it just comes down to the definitions and what is it going to be, so we can get things rolling here. Because once they
That's
get that
true.
laid out, I think that one's huge. Because if you get that one laid out, banks are going to start piling into the staking reward opportunities and stablecoin transactions. And of course, that may actually, the thing that there's a question for you. So let's say they get this passed, and let's say Bitcoin or let's say Ethereum, anything that you can actually stake and you can yield on and keep earning. Is that going to almost put, I'm not going to say a floor, but it's going to build somewhat of a floor at certain levels where people just aren't going to sell? Because instead of holding in cash or whatever you're holding it in, you could just keep accumulating and keep holding. And and there's a lot of reasons to own this, not just the yield. Maybe you want to be a larger contributor to the validators. Maybe you want to do, Bitcoin. Maybe you want to own more Bitcoin or Ethereum mining tools, because I know that's a big trend that's happening in the cloud industry. A lot of people are migrating the mining operations over to the clouds, using their hardware to do the Bitcoin mining and Ethereum mining. Matter of fact, that's one of the biggest threats for the cloud services companies. I'm looking at you, Amazon, Google, Microsoft. Those companies are having some of the biggest attacks. Are those people hijacking people's accounts and then mining on their environments? That's been a kind of a trend that's been happening in the industry. But to go back to what I was saying is, if you have all this hardware, yeah, there's a huge demand for all that power, and those mines are going to be starting to boost up. So people are starting to move to that. It's actually been a strategy that companies have started migrating to, instead of trying to buy all this hardware, just renting out the space with these cloud industries, these big data farms. So they've been trying to go that route. So that's an interesting landscape that's been changing to get an edge on everybody. So basically what I'm mumbling on about here is, really, if you get clarity on this, you could see some potential big transaction moves. And I think we were stating to it earlier with some of these companies already trying to position themselves to get prepared for this. And that's what you're starting to see manifest now. So it's going to be really exciting. I mean, if you're in crypto, man, it's like this is fun to watch, because this is actually cool. like you're kind of finally seeing things come into fruition. Like, cool, what's the new thing we get to look forward to? Instead of 2022, oh my God, what bad news is going to happen this week? Who's going to get rugged? What founder is going to get arrested or killed, or what's going to go on? It was crazy. You could write if somebody were to write a story of the last, 2022, nobody would believe it.
Yeah, the FTX thing was just like, it was larger than life almost. Like, if you're telling me that some founder was gonna create some mansion in the Cayman Islands, or he had his employees do drugs and orgies, and then that somehow would lead to a giant collapse where they were taking their consumers' money to buy their own token to prop it up to make more money, but ultimately lose it all. It's like, yeah, no, that's like TV drama right there. It's
and then the massive kickbacks to all the politicians on top of it, all the donations to the politicians that were going on, and the gambling that was being used on people's funds. But that was just one story. There was a bunch of stories like that you got to go back and really see the history of it. Like, somebody's got to create a really good high production value documentary. And I'm sure these are in the making already, because they would just blow people's mind in the real world. They didn't hear about any of this, because the amount of money that was happening was insane. And then to find out with FTX scandal, Tom Brady and his wife with Angel Foundation, their LLC Angel, they got rugged. They lost, what was it, 650 million or something crazy like that. I mean, it was, the stories were insane. But what I'm getting at is, now it's like, cool, what's coming? We see now things come into fruition. We see the opportunities here. To me, once we get through the taxation, once we get through some of the stablecoin discussions, now we start getting into the fun stuff that I want to hear about, which is, when are they going to start allowing tokenizations? When are they going to start, like, how's that going to operate? If you mint something out of thin air, what does that mean? Is that now a created artwork? Is it created as a functional collectible? Like, that's going to be a whole other one they're going to have to cross the bridge on, because that one's fantastic. Yeah. And then the scary part, I think, for those people that are like the doom and gloom people, which I could see is like, okay, cool. When are they going to stop with? They're going to start with, they're not going to start tokenizing everything. They're going to start tokenizing us. Yeah, Social Security card. Why don't you just start tokening us? I mean, you can go down this rabbit hole for a long conversation, but one step at a time.
To bring it back though, I think the easiest, most obvious win or answer for the taxation thing is don't tax creation of digital assets, because you could theoretically create a perverse incentive where you could just like make an asset and just like give it to somebody, and then on your side of the house you pump the asset up because you have controls over it or something, and then you sick the IRS on them and be like, look, they have unpaid gains over there, I just gave it to them. It's like, yeah, no, just do it on selling transactable events. That's the easiest way to do it. Anytime you sell, that's a taxable event. That's the thing that makes the most sense to me. I think it's easy to push for as well.
Well, it does, but then you have states out there that are saying they're not going to have capital gains. I mean, that's pretty impressive. So I want to see more of that.
Well,
if you've got, because you're going to get in this debate where, say, like you live in a state, right? And you have, let's just say you're in that really great place where you've got life-changing money in crypto. You know, me, I'm moving states before I decide to take anything out. I'm not going to play that game. I mean, why would you? That'd be just stupid. It's worth the extra hassle to go ahead and do it, whether it's just for a short period of time. So you're going to see people doing that stuff, just like you're going to see some people taking dual citizenships and going to another country and be like, I'm going to cash out over here and not have to worry about anything. I mean, if it's life-changing money, you're going to see things like this manifest, because if you're talking that kind of significant money, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be fascinating to see people having to deal with some of these problems. And that's why I would highly, highly advise everybody, if you get into that predicament, you need to go talk to a true crypto financial CPA. You need to speak to somebody who really knows their stuff. And I'm not talking about go to H&R Block and some fly-by-night or some joker. I'm talking about you need to go to somebody that really knows their stuff to understand what your opportunities are and what you should do. Because once you make that transaction, once you offboard it, man, bam, that taxation is just kicked in. You cannot undo that. So be very careful before you decide making any type of big decision like that. Just FYI.
That's true. As it stands right now, I want to say there are with capital gains, it's important to remember there's federal and state. Unfortunately, I don't think the federal is going away anytime soon, as much as we wish they would make good on this promise of no capital gains on American crypto. But we're going to have to wait and see the legislation on that one. States, though, states do have the ability to set their capital gains rate. I want to say the highest one when I was doing my research was like 11%. I was talking to Will yesterday. He said Washington State is like 8.5%, but I'm pretty sure there are 13 states out there that have zero capital gains taxes for them. So there's stuff out there already, but the future is yet to unfold still. So we got to see what that.
Yeah, I'll lay it out right here. It's Wyoming, Florida, Texas, Alaska, Nevada, South Dakota, Tennessee, and Washington. All impose no personal state income tax, which means that the crypto investors in these states may benefit from a 0% tax rate on their crypto investments.
I don't think that's quite right. That's state taxes. No income tax for those states, but capital gains tax is still a thing for states.
Yeah, hold on. Washington State is the only state that with ability to capital gains tax on digital assets, meaning that they have not, you will not have it on a capital gain tax, is Washington. But Missouri, I know that's the one that came up. Missouri was the one that was doing House Bill 594, and they were looking to pass, and they were going to push it to where there'd be no capital gain. So Missouri and Washington would be your two options. Of course, there's Puerto Rico too. There's Puerto Rico there because it's not really a state. It's not a state, so you have that option. But to go back to the federal taxes, so once again, how are they going to handle that? If you decide to get dual citizenship and you go to another country, and like I said, if it's life-changing money, it may be worth your in your best interest to do that, even though it might be a hassle. Just saying.
Yeah, true. But that's neither here nor there. That's a conversation for another cast. Alrighty, good sir. Before we go, I do have a quick rapid fire of things from Twitter that I found slightly amusing. Number one, coming to us from Peter Schiff. He said, keep dreaming. Bitcoin's never going to hit $100,000. Thank you to Watcher Guru for digging up this gem. Granted, it is all the way from 2019, but still hilarious nonetheless. And then we also have everyone's favorite, Jim Cramer. Bitcoin is up 200% since Jim Cramer said this back in 2024. Bitcoin is a tough own. Unlikely that Bitcoin will find its footing. I will also say this is like literally one day before the ETFs got announced. So
that's a little sus. It's a little sus. Yeah. So anyhow, he's like the inverse oracle, man. That's for sure.
There you go. Outside of that, though, folks, one last moment of shameless self-promotion here. Just remember, the waters get rough, so don't sail through them alone. Come join us as we navigate digital finance together. Private mentorship, exclusive live streams, Q&A. Go from beginner to intermediate to expert with us. Head on over to walktheblockndf.com. You can find the membership page there. Get into the private Telegram. Catch all of Agent J's excellent streams that he does. Very high-level content in there that you're probably not going to find anywhere else, or not for free anyways. So yeah, if you wouldn't mind doing that, we would greatly appreciate it. And we'd love to hang out with you more in there. Outside of that, Tracker, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
No, just if you're in our membership, keep your eyes glued to our Telegram. We'll keep you guys updated through this whole week since it's going to be an exciting week. I'm sure Jay and them will have some really good TA for you guys on the various levels to be watching and your various assets. But ultimately, yeah, just stay close and glued to what's happening this week. It's going to be an interesting what comes out of these committees and see what's happening. So you can easily find those dates and times that we already listed out. You can Google them when they're out there. But yeah, this whole week, a lot of good, interesting things are going to come out of it. Most of it should start to come out around Wednesday of this week, July 16th, or Thursday. We'll start to give you some clarity on what the heck is coming out of these. You'll probably see them on mainstream media, at least like financial shows and stuff. You'll see it as well. So just keep glued to that. And if not, you can also find us in the Digigen channel, also in the chats and Telegram. So we also are live in there a lot. So a lot of activity, a lot of good communications. Stay glued. We're hitting all-time highs. I don't think we're done by a long shot. Just saying.
That is very true. I'll tell you what, though, it does feel like the wind is in the sails right now, but still just a reminder, keep both hands on the helm. Outside of that, folks, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm Zenith. This has been Tracker. We are Walk the Block, and we hope that you continue to navigate digital finance safely and responsibly as you enjoy all of your new gains. Until we catch you guys next time, everybody, good night.